Welcome to the Indie Composers Podcast. My name is LJ Garcia, and I'm here with a new character in the world of indie composers, co-host Alex Ketch. Alex, how are you?
I'm good. Hi. I'm very excited to be here.
Wonderful. We're excited to have you. John is out today, and Alex has graciously filled in for him. Today, we are very excited to be joined by our special guest, Adele Etheridge Woodson. Adele is a film and media composer whose credits include an upcoming documentary called Pant Hoot about a Burundi genocide survivor who overcomes overwhelming odds to become a master chimpanzee linguist at Dr. Jane Goodall's Chimp Eden Sanctuary in South Africa. Adele has also composed music for Arizona PBS's documentary short, Hero Material, as well as a number of short films coming out this summer, like Gold's, Cone 10, Breakfast at the Sunset Saloon, and Ayee. So keep a lookout. We'll put links to all of Adele's stuff in the description. She graduated from the School of Music at Arizona State University with a Bachelor of Arts in Music and a certificate in Arts Entrepreneurship. She was also the recipient of the Outstanding Graduate in Creative Work Award for the class of 2020. Adele, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Want to just jump right in. Particularly excited to be talking with you because of your work on the documentary Pant Hoot, something a little close to my heart. I work for Jane Goodall. So tell us about
That's awesome.
that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so this opportunity kind of fell into my lap almost literally. It's a little bit of the old-fashioned nepotism, I'm not gonna lie. My grandmother's stepson is a filmmaker, and I happened to be in Dallas at the time when he was visiting with her, and we were just talking about the film, and he mentioned that he was looking for a composer. I was like, wow, that's so crazy. I'm a composer. It was really funny how it worked out that way. And so we ended up working together, and it was definitely the first time I had worked with a full crew, because I'm sure, as you understand, when you're student filmmakers don't really have this full team at their disposal just yet. And at the time I am in my life, that's pretty much all I've worked with before. So it was really great to work with the director, Richard Reens. He's so amazing. He's been doing film and photography his entire life. Not to mention, like, Jane Goodall's like my childhood hero. When I was like 8 years old, I wanted to be a zoologist just to be like Jane. So it was just so cool to be able to work on something like that. Yeah, and it was also just a really cool learning opportunity. I had no idea. I mean, of course, I'm all about environmental activism and things like that, but I didn't really quite understand the work they were doing at Chimp Eden. I didn't really understand Stanny's story. So it was an incredible ride, from start to finish, just getting to learn about these amazing people.
On the musical side of that, I was reading another interview you had done earlier this year, and you were talking about the different range of instruments that you kind of, what is it? I'm sorry, trying to find the word, compartmentalized. What's the word for putting a particular instrument in a category for one character, and you either create a leitmotif, but you did that for different array, like using the kalimba for Dr. Goodall. And so what was that orchestration like?
So Richard, he had some ideas. He definitely came to me with the idea that he wanted each character to have its own unique sound. Their own soundscape, their own recognizable instruments, whatever. But after that, he was kind of like, let's just experiment. Let's figure out what you like. So I'm a violinist, so I always jump to strings first. That's just my brain and my world. So I started scoring things with strings, and we would figure out, what worked, what didn't work. Okay, there's one part in the film where Stanny is talking about fleeing the genocide. Obviously, we need to add something more intense there, and that's when I started experimenting with different African percussion and different low drums that they have throughout the region. And I also did quite a bit of extensive research into Burundian traditional music. It's really, really interesting. They have this really cool whispered chanting style that I wanted to incorporate into the film, which ended up being kind of a cappella vocal piece in the end credits. So I was able to kind of experiment with this whole soundscape. So there's a lot of things that come in, throughout the piece. It's like strings, piano, African percussion, kalimba. Jane, I really wanted to have solo violin as well, so that kind of, comes out. And then obviously this Burundian whispered chanting thing that's happening. So even though the film is only about 18, 19 minutes long, it was a really cool experience getting to just throw a bunch of ideas at the wall and seeing what sticks.
That's fantastic. And it's going to be entered in some film festivals. Do you know of any of the film festivals that it will be presented in so the audience can see it?
Yeah, so we have been accepted to a few festivals as of right now. I'm not totally sure I'm allowed to say which ones yet, just because of the marketing team.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
But yeah, we've definitely gotten to some local stuff, and we're waiting to hear back from, bigger Oscar qualifying international festivals, which because of COVID, their notification dates have kind of been pushed back, but
Shifted,
we should be hearing within the next month or so between pretty much everyone we applied to, and then I think that's when they're going to start releasing where we're at.
Fantastic. Well, then we'll keep links in the description for everyone to follow along with that. And yeah.
Perfect.
So what was your first exposure to music performance or composition?
Yeah, so I started playing the violin when I was 8 years old. So I really grew up in the classical orchestra world, but I also did Irish fiddling, which was really cool, and that kind of expanded my horizons to various genres. And then I went to Arizona School for the Arts, which is a performing arts high school. So we had academics in the morning, and then we would go to our designated arts programs. And so mine was always just 2 hours of orchestra, which allowed me to, hone my skills as a performer, meet other musicians, and eventually prepare for music auditions. And when I was I think I was 15, that was when I really started thinking about composing. I'd always loved film music. My dad and I, when I was growing up, that was our dad-daughter bonding time, was just watching movies together. So it's, a very nostalgic feeling for me to be thinking about these film scores that I grew up with. Even Ilana Shkeri's Stardust theme, I love that score. It's one of my absolute favorites. And then
gorgeous.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And then, I was a huge fan of the Pirates of the Caribbean music. I used to play in my room pretending I was a pirate, to the theme songs. So just growing up, I just loved this music, but I never really considered there's an actual person writing this. When you're a kid, you don't think about that stuff. So as I'm getting older, I'm like, okay, this is pretty sick. There's people who are doing this. And I had a experience where my school orchestra went to go represent the state of Arizona in this big celebration for a local theater that's here. And we were conducted by this amazing hip-hop violinist composer. His name's Dr. Daniel Bernard Romaine. And he's one of those people that his energy just lights up a room and you're immediately drawn to him. And the whole time he's talking about how he composes, how he creates. And it was the first time I'd really heard anyone speak so passionately about writing music. And I had the chance to speak with him backstage, and I mentioned, hey, I really am interested in composing. I think it's really cool what you do. I'm not really sure where to start. And he was like, trust your instinct, trust your sound. You're meant to do this. I can feel it. And it's just kind of one of those things where I was like, okay, hell yeah, I'm gonna do this. Just people come into your life at the right time, and I feel like he was there. And he ended up teaching me all throughout my 4 years of college, which is really crazy. So now we have a really close relationship. So he was really the catalyst for that. And then once I got into school itself, that was when I was really learning, the theory behind composition, and I was starting to build relationships with film students and doing a lot of research on the side and things like that. But yeah, always learning, always working.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
And
that's really cool.
Thank you.
there's someone I can't remember who. I wish I could give credit to the name. But someone in my past told me that majority of the opportunity that you get in the film industry and in working with film music in particular is going to come from said it's going to happen by chance. And that's really true. I mean, who you come across, and you never really know for certain, and who's going to come into your life and who's going to set you into those directions. So
Exactly. Yeah, it's I'm a very organized, plan-oriented person, and so going into an industry that relies very, very heavily on luck, networking, and chance is, it's daunting, but
brutal.
yeah, it is brutal. And, there's so many amazing, talented composers who, have yet to catch their break or caught it really late. Like, I'm thinking of Michael Abels. I studied his work in my senior year, and he originally wanted to be a film composer in his early career, and then didn't get hired anywhere, and so he ended up doing concert music. And so he didn't get his film score break until Jordan Peele found him for his film Get Out. So it's just those things where you hear about stories like that, but you also just have to remember, like, I want to be in this industry. Obviously, if I didn't want, I wouldn't be trying this hard. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
It's
time is
extremely
just
rewarding.
exactly.
Sorry.
It is. No, yeah, it's super rewarding, like you said, and the relationships I've built already have, a lot of them have become my good friends. So it's a good environment.
That's really cool. So when you are stuck on a piece of music, and you get writer's block, what do you do to help you get over that hump?
It happens kind of a lot. I definitely have to just take a step away from everything. I usually am just like, all right, I'm getting frustrated. I'm going to turn off everything. I'm going to just go do something else. And that usually involves like going to hang out with someone or watching a TV show and like completely like turning my brain off. Sometimes it just means going to Spotify and playing something completely that's not what I'm working on to kind of, I call it like cleaning my ears. Just because like
That's awesome.
I just like when I was working on Pant Hoot a lot, I mean, I loved working on it, but sometimes it could feel very monotonous. And so I would just go over to Spotify and like put on some like 80s pop, and that like would it's kind of like clearing your sinuses almost, but it's just like my brain needed a little bit of a break. And usually that helps a lot, but sometimes you just have to like you have to come back to it, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. That's the thing about some like working in a creative field is, you have a deadline, you got to get it done, but at the same time, sometimes you can't force these things to happen.
I definitely relate to that.
Yeah, I feel
so,
most creative people feel that.
Yeah. So speaking of challenges, what has been the most challenging project of your career and why?
That's a good question. I think so every director is different, of course. And working with film students in particular, like some of them can be very, very picky, which is totally cool. Like it's their film. But there were a few short films I worked on recently. I'm not gonna name any just because they're all.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean they're all good, like fine, like great experiences. But there were a few where it was like the constant revisions thing, and I just feel like that just happens to every composer where you feel like it's perfect, and then they're like, Actually, we want a completely different direction. And then you do the completely different direction. They're like, actually, let's go back to what we had before. And it's just kind of a back and forth thing. And it, it can be challenging, but honestly, in a way, it was a good challenge for me because it prepared me for what will happen in the future, no matter like what the size of the production. There's always going to be people who, have to give their opinions on your music. And that was a challenge for me personally because I had to learn how to separate my music from my ego or my identity. Like, I can't be like, this is the best piece of music I've ever written, because if someone's like, I hate it, then I'm gonna feel like shit, So
Precise.
yeah, so that's something I'm, still working on, and probably will have to keep working on my entire career, just because, you know, your music is so personal. But with film scoring, it can't be that personal if you don't want to be offended like every 20 minutes.
That's very true. And that reminds me of two things. The first thing that comes to mind is, and I'm not quite sure about all historical accounts, but I think that Mozart was like the epitome of turning his music into his ego and letting that become 100%
Mhm.
himself. And I
Mhm.
mean, it led to his death. So there is a
Mhm.
profound effect it can have on you. And the other thing is, what you were talking about reminded me of when we had Andrew Lockington on, and he was talking about there are there's some films that you compose for, and it does feel like work, and
Mhm.
that's going to impact the amount of creativity you either just generate or put into that, and you really have to set the balance and
Mhm.
try to realize there is a point where it becomes good enough, and so where the
Exactly.
music is.
Exactly. Yeah, I realize film scoring is quite different from the concert composition world in the sense that you are providing a service to this director, to this film, to the producers, whatever. It's not all about you. Whereas with concert music, you can do whatever you want because it is all about you. So that's something that's quite different from when I grew up in the orchestra and was like learning about, the classical composers and stuff. Like, they were able to, like, kind of like Mozart, he was able to attach his ego to his music because there was no one really stopping him from doing that. Whereas with film music, it's like you're just one little cog in the machine. So you can't be like that.
Precisely. And
Yeah,
speaking of concert, oh no, sorry, Alex, you go.
I was just gonna say I actually took a film scoring class recently, and
Mhm.
I'm like you. I grew up playing violin and in the orchestra world, and so learning that a director could completely decide to scrap everything you've written like was kind of
Yeah.
shocking.
Yeah, I've already had instances where like I do like 4 or 5 revisions on a specific cue, and then a few weeks later, they're like, "Here's the final cut, check it out," and the cue is nowhere to be seen. They've completely scrapped it, and
Yes,
that it's just, yeah. But you know what? It is what it is.
it is.
It,
C'est la vie.
exactly, exactly.
Well, I want to take a step back. You were mentioning concert music. So you have performed in some really cool places. If I remember correctly, Vienna, Austria. Can you tell us about all the places some of the places that you've had concerts and what that was
Yeah,
like?
yeah. I've been really lucky with the opportunities that have been presented to me. Going back to Dr. Romaine, he actually awarded me the opportunity way back in freshman year to go perform bluegrass music in Nashville for the president of Arizona State University and a bunch of other like random rich donors. So that kind of started my whole journey. Uh, Dr. Romaine, I call him DBR, he also brought me to New York City, where I was able to perform an original composition of mine on drum kit singing. And then he played violin, and we hired a local cellist as well. We played at National Sawdust in Brooklyn, which was amazing. They're super great people over there. And then let's see, I was in a band with a drag queen for a while, and we got to go perform in LA. at a sold out drag queen pageant, which was really crazy and fun.
That's
And
awesome.
that was just one of those things where I used to watch RuPaul's Drag Race with my roommate just for fun, and there were a few drag queens from the TV show who were there, and so that was pretty cool to
What?
see. Yeah, it was a huge thing. It was what was the theater called? I forgot what it was called, but it was sold out, and there were like hundreds of people there, and it was super fun. And I got to play violin and synthesizer for that one. So, what else? Austria was amazing. It was part of the Vienna Summer Music Festival, so it was kind of like a school setup in a way, where they chose there were like 10 of us, and we were all composers and from around the world. And we went to Vienna for 3 weeks, where we had composition classes, master classes. We had private lessons with local Austrian composers, and then we got to have our original compositions performed at kind of like as a culminating concert. So I wrote a hip hop string quartet based on Kendrick Lamar's Humble. And so that was really cool to bring kind of a classical remix of a hip hop song that I love to, Vienna, where, Mozart lived and worked. Haydn was there.
Salieri.
Exactly. It was like going to Vienna was like walking through my music history book. So it was just a really amazing opportunity. And I didn't perform there, but I went to London to go work with the music supervisor for Black Mirror. She offered that I could come kind of shadow her for like a week. And that was super cool. So,
Wow.
I've been really lucky. And also I've learned if you reach out to people, like I literally just reached out to that music supervisor on LinkedIn, and she was like, yeah, feel free, come here and I'll show you, what I'm working on. And people are just super nice and super welcoming. So yeah, super lucky, super lucky.
Actually, a comment on that, because indie composers, I'm sorry, we've all to the audience have been a little absent the past few months. It's been a little difficult, as I'm sure it has been for everyone. And I'm sorry, I'm just forgetting what I'm saying as I start speaking. Oh, okay. So you made that comment about LinkedIn. Actually, that is a wonderful way to reach people. The thing is, I think that a lot of composers and young artists in general think that, or have it in their minds, is that people who work in these big companies or for these particular, like I don't know, we'll pick let's say someone who works at Disney. You have to also remember that they're reasonable human beings, and once they were in your position, so reaching out is not harmful, and just be respectful and kind. And and that's actually how I got my job with Jane Goodall with the Institute, was over LinkedIn.
Wow. Yeah, see, it comes full circle.
It does, absolutely. I want to completely, turn 180 degrees. I want you, Adele, to think back to the earliest time when you were a kid. What was the first melody or full song that you ever created and either just went to the piano and played? And what was it about, or what was it geared towards?
Wow, I have to think about that. So when I started with Irish music, the whole deal with Irish folk music is it's not supposed to be written down. So I learned all of it by ear, got to perform it, whatever. And I actually was in a family band, really. My parents realized that I really loved playing music, and so they all picked up Irish instruments, and we would just jam out together. And so I think the first instance of me learning about improvisation, and I guess in a way composing and writing, was just with my family band. I would take what I had learned by ear and combine this style and these different melodies. And as I'm sure Alex understands, when you are familiar with an instrument, you don't have to think about where your fingers are going. So you can kind of just feel that instinct and create something. So in a space where it's just my family and I'm a kid and I don't even know how to read sheet music yet, that was probably my first safe space to just try new things. And I think that's probably the first one. And I don't really think it had any specific message. I don't think I really started writing to have a message until I was quite older. It was just to have fun and to make my family have something to play with and make people dance, because that's the cool thing about Irish music is a lot of it is just like fun dance music to get drunk to. So it's like it's just good vibes,
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, I relate to that so much. The part about where with violin especially, it's just like you kind of know where to put your fingers and like you just know how to play your instrument. It's all just like based off feeling,
Exactly.
I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely relate to that.
It's your early training gives you the tools, and then you can do with the tools what you want,
Exactly.
And bridging off of that, so recently I saw that you did a competition for the HBO Westworld score or the score competition. Okay. So and my question is kind of geared from that. And I noticed that in that you used a lot of synth and really cool drums, especially at the beginning. So and if you were not composing primarily for orchestral music, what kind of music would you be composing? Or what would be your I don't know, second bridge off from that to go?
It would
That makes
totally
sense.
be what the Westworld score was. I love electronic music. I think one of my favorite genres of all time is hip hop. Um, I I just love the groove. I was actually kind of part of the local hip hop community in Phoenix, and being able to see how dancers, especially, connect to the beats and connect to the rhythms, the hi hats, whatever, was really inspiring to me. They're taking these sounds and they're creating these really amazing dances, and oftentimes they're battling one another. And that's a huge inspiration for me. Is I want to be able to create music that people can groove to, people can dance to, just because I mean, obviously every film score is different. Not every director is like, I want something people can groove to. But if I had free reign, it would be something, memorable that people can move their head to, move their feet to. Yeah, throughout college, I really experimented with various electronic sounds. I did like an electronic installation for the ASU Art Museum, and my senior thesis was synthesizer with live euphonium, which was really fun. And so definitely my world would be electronics, 100%.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that's really cool. I know that at my university we have a bunch of like electronic instruments that I just love playing around with, and electronic music is really so cool.
Yeah, and it's such a big part of film scores, like for so long too, since.
Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I'm in university, so I'm kind of just starting out on my composition journey. So as someone just starting out, what do you wish you knew about composing for films and other visual media before you started?
So not every school is like this. I'm not sure which one you go to, but Arizona State is very classical, very traditional conservatory. They didn't really have resources for kids who wanted to do film scoring or anything that wasn't like classical or like weird avant-garde music. So I was for many years feeling pressured to write how my classmates were writing or write how my professors wanted me to write. And I really struggled with it. I had a really hard time with their composition program because I felt like they were expecting me to sound a certain way. And unfortunately, that's kind of how the academic institutions work, at least most of them. So I wish I could go back and tell freshman year me that you can write whatever you want. Of course, study what came before you, study different genres, appreciate the classical composition style. And then, no, you don't have to write in that style. You can write in whatever style you want because every genre has its complexities, has its different instrumentations and styles, basically. So it took me a long time to find my voice, and it's kind of a constant journey, so I would just say trust your gut and do what makes you happy. Do what you would like, not what anyone else would like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I know that when I was starting out in composition, I thought it was all about like writing for a symphony, and it wasn't until I got to college that I realized that no, you can write with electronic instruments in any style that you really want to.
Exactly.
So I think that's really cool.
Yeah. It helps to have people to look up to, heroes, or even just your friends who are doing cool stuff, because I'm just constantly inspired what people are doing around me. And it wasn't until I saw my friends or people that I didn't know personally that I really looked up to doing whatever they wanted and having a career with music that I thought was super dope. I mean, Kendrick Lamar won the Pulitzer Prize for music. Like, that was just a crazy moment for me. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I was like, there's so much elitism too with white classical music, and it takes a lot to push through that barrier, but once you push through it, it's like, wow, look at all these amazing options in front of me. You can do whatever you want.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, Adele, you know what? I don't feel like I want to go into that question just yet because that's like, give me 1 second. Alex,
No
is there
worries.
anything in particular you'd like to ask Adele?
Sure. So we were talking about electronic music. Um, is there any, actually, speaking of electronic music, what's your favorite like digital audio workspace, and like why did you choose to work with that one specifically?
Good
Mm.
question.
I work pretty much solely with Logic Pro. I think it was
Same.
because, yeah, I think Logic is the most intuitive and easy to navigate DAWs, especially for people who aren't familiar with DAWs, which I wasn't at all. I also, you know, grew up with Apple products. So Apple products always had GarageBand in it. And GarageBand is basically just like baby Logic. So when I was a kid, I would just mess around in GarageBand for fun. And when I finally invested in Logic, it was like, oh, it's pretty much the exact same thing, just with more buttons to push, basically. So totally Logic all the way.
Adele, what is your go-to snack or drink whenever you're going to compose music? What gets you in the creative mood?
I love that question. I always have snacks on deck because when I get hangry, I cannot get anything done. I'm just cranky. So
Oh, same.
my go-tos, I literally have it right next to me right now, is Welch's fruit snacks. I also really like granola bars. Just like things like that to like munch on while I'm just kind of messing around on my computer. But it's also sometimes when I get in the zone, I forget to eat meals. So I've been trying to be better about having like real food at real normal human times instead of just fruit snacks for 12 hours.
Okay, it's hilarious that you say Welch's gummies. So I'm a film major. Actually, Alex and I both go to the same university, George Mason University.
Yeah, we do.
I have a producer friend of mine named Josh McLean, consistently says that the number one snack that you need to have absolutely 100% of the time on every set is Welch's gummies. You get the big box because people blow through that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Wow, Josh is on my wavelength. We have a huge box at home because myself and my sisters, it's just like you said, we blow through it. It's crazy.
It is. They're addicting. So, Adele, do you have anything that you want to share, or where could we find you online, and how can everybody, give you a follow or listen to your music? And
Yeah, so everything's on my website, adelebrook.com. Brooke is Brooke. But I'm also active on pretty much every social media, particularly Instagram, which is at Adele Composer. And I'm starting to put more music stuff on Twitter instead of just kind of shit posting on Twitter, which is at Adele Brooke with an underscore at the end. So yeah, pretty much always online. I think everyone our age is, so super easy to get in touch with.
yeah, it's very important. I feel nowadays, especially because it serves as it's like moved past the social aspect and become a business platform, and
Exactly.
promoting yourself. So
Yeah, that's still something I'm working on, but I feel the power of social media can significantly like an artist's career can significantly benefit from using social media correctly.
yes. Well, Adele, thank you so much for coming on, and that's the questions that we have for you today.
Thank
Oh
you.
man, it's been so long since I've closed an Indie Composers episode. I don't know how to do it. So, all right, everyone, go give Adele a listen, and yeah, thank you for listening to the podcast. Take care.